My name is Wilbur Reynolds, 32 years old, and until last Thursday, everyone at Reynolds Enterprises thought I was just the founder's pushover son. That changed when my stepbrother Marcus blocked the boardroom door, sneering, "Sorry, this is for shareholders only." Little did he know that for 3 years, I'd been silently holding 75% of the company's shares, waiting for exactly this moment. The look on his face when I revealed the truth was worth every second of humiliation I'd endured. Before I tell you how it all went down, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever wanted to witness the perfect revenge served ice cold. To understand how I ended up in that hallway, confronting my stepbrother, you need to know the story of Reynolds Enterprises. My father, Richard Reynolds, started this company in his garage 30 years ago. With nothing but a vision and relentless determination, I grew up watching him transform a small consulting operation into a $50 million technology solutions company that employed over 300 people. Dad was my hero. He taught me that business wasn't just about making money, but about creating something valuable, taking care of your people, and leaving a positive mark on the world. Our home was filled with blueprints, prototypes, and late-night strategy sessions. While other kids had bedtime stories, I had lessons about market penetration and customer loyalty. My mother, Elizabeth, was Dad's partner in every sense of the word. She handled the books in those early days, made client calls, and kept everything running, while still making time to be an amazing mom. When she died from breast cancer when I was 12, it shattered our world. Dad threw himself into the business, and I spent my teenage years divided between school and hanging around the office, soaking up everything I could about the company. For 9 years, it was just Dad and me. We developed a rhythm, a shorthand way of communicating. He'd bounce ideas off me, even when I was too young to fully understand the complexities. "You've got good instincts, Wilbur," he'd say. "Trust them." Everything changed when I was 21. Dad met Diane at a charity gala. She was charming, sophisticated, and seemed genuinely interested in both Dad and me. After years of seeing him lonely, I was happy when he started smiling again. Their whirlwind romance culminated in marriage just 8 months after they met. With Diane came her son, Marcus, 34, from her previous marriage. Marcus immediately took an interest in Reynolds Enterprises, despite having zero experience in our industry. He had an MBA, but had bounced between marketing positions at various companies, never staying anywhere longer than a year or two. Still, Dad was thrilled at the prospect of having 2 sons involved in the business. "Family legacy, Wilbur," Dad would say, clapping me on the shoulder. "That's what it's all about." I had specifically chosen to study both business and engineering to be useful to the company. After college, I insisted on working my way up, starting in product development, then customer support, gradually earning the respect of our employees through hard work and problem solving. I wanted to learn every aspect of the business my father had built. Marcus took a different approach. He charmed his way into the executive circle, leveraging his relationship with my father to secure a vice president position within months of our parents' marriage. He talked a good game in meetings, using buzzwords and vague strategies that sounded impressive but lacked substance. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he genuinely wanted to contribute. Maybe we could be partners in growing Dad's legacy. But I noticed how he took credit for other people's ideas, how he dismissed the institutional knowledge of longtime employees, how he always positioned himself at Dad's right hand in company photos. Everything accelerated 4 years ago, when Dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The doctors gave him 18 months, and true to form, he approached his limited time with strategic thinking. He began having private conversations with me about the future of the company. "I'm worried about Marcus and Diane," he confided one evening as we sat in his home office. "Their interest in the company seems different from yours." "Different how?" I asked, though I already knew. "You see Reynolds Enterprises as a living thing, something to nurture and grow. They see it as an asset to control." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I've made some arrangements, legal precautions, just in case." I didn't press him for details. Dad had always been methodical and careful. If he had a plan, I trusted it. He fought hard, lasting almost a year longer than the doctors predicted. But 3 years ago, we lost him. The reading of the will was tense. Marcus and Diane sat across from me, their expressions carefully neutral, but eyes calculating. The lawyer, Jonathan Mercer, Dad's friend for 30 years, read through the document with deliberate care. The distribution of company shares confused everyone. 25% went jointly to Marcus and Diane. Another 25% was distributed among long-serving board members. But the controlling 50% was unaccounted for in the public reading. The assumption, which Marcus quickly vocalized, was that the board would vote to control those shares. This seemed to satisfy everyone, except Jonathan, who gave me a knowing look. After the others left, he handed me a sealed envelope. "Your father asked me to give you this privately," he said. Inside was a letter from Dad, along with legal documents showing he had transferred 50% of the company shares to me through a private holding company. Combined with the 25%, I was publicly bequeathed. I controlled 75% of Reynolds Enterprises. "Don't show your hand too soon," Dad's letter advised. "Watch and learn. The right moment will present itself." I decided to honor his wishes. I kept the arrangement to myself, working alongside Marcus while closely observing his moves. I wanted to give him a chance to prove my suspicions wrong. Maybe Dad had been overly cautious. Maybe Marcus truly wanted what was best for the company. I would soon discover how wrong that hope was. In the weeks following Dad's funeral, there was a brief period where I genuinely believed Marcus and I could work together effectively. The board appointed him Chief Operating Officer while I headed product development, maintaining my focus on the technical side where my strengths lay. We had several productive meetings discussing company direction and growth opportunities. "I think we can double revenue within 3 years if we focus on enterprise clients," Marcus said during one of our early strategy sessions. "That makes sense," I agreed. "But we shouldn't abandon our mid-market clients. That steady revenue helped us weather the last recession." He nodded thoughtfully. "Good point. Let's develop strategies for both segments." These moments of collaboration gave me hope. Perhaps Dad's concerns had been unfounded. Perhaps grief had colored his perception of Marcus's intentions. I had allies within the company who'd been there since the early days. Janet, our chief financial officer, had worked with Dad for 20 years and knew every financial detail of the business. Michael headed engineering and had been my mentor since I joined the company full-time. Sarah in HR had a sixth sense about people and organizational dynamics and had privately expressed concerns about Marcus even before Dad's death. "Just be careful," she warned me over coffee one morning. "Marcus is building a network of supporters, people who owe him favors." I brushed off her concern initially. Building relationships within the company wasn't necessarily sinister, but I began noticing patterns that troubled me. 6 months after Dad's death, we launched a new software platform I had been developing with my team for over a year. It was a significant innovation that would open new market opportunities for us. During the launch presentation to our major clients, Marcus took the podium. "Today marks a new chapter for Reynolds Enterprises," he announced confidently. "This platform represents our vision for the future." Throughout his 30-minute presentation, he mentioned my name only once, and my team not at all. He spoke as if the platform had been his brainchild, using "I" and my vision repeatedly. I sat in the audience, watching clients nod appreciatively at his polished delivery, feeling a knot form in my stomach. Diane attended the launch, ostensibly to support the family business. She circulated among clients during the reception, introducing Marcus as the new face of Reynolds Enterprises and referring to me as our product guy when I was within earshot. The board was gradually changing too. As terms expired, newer members joined who had connections to Marcus. During meetings, I noticed how they deferred to him, how proposals I made were scrutinized while his were fast-tracked. The balance of power was subtly shifting. When I tried to discuss these observations with Marcus, he was masterful at deflection. "You're imagining things, Wilbur," he'd say with a laugh. "We're all on the same team here. Maybe you're still processing Dad's death?" Grief can make us see conflicts where none exist. Family dinners became exercises in restraint. Diane would host elaborate meals where she and Marcus would exchange meaningful glances across the table while making comments about modernizing outdated business practices and the importance of fresh perspectives. "Your father was brilliant for his time," Diane would say, patting my hand condescendingly. But business evolves, darling. I discovered through casual conversations with board members that Marcus had been meeting with them individually. Discussions I was never invited to join. Decisions began appearing in company communications that I had no input on. A partnership I'd cultivated with a complementary technology firm was suddenly terminated. The innovation budget for my department was cut by 30%. Loyal employees started coming to me with concerns. Sales strategies were changing, customer service protocols were being altered, and the company culture was shifting from one of collaboration to competition. People who had been with Reynolds Enterprises for years were feeling sidelined. Through it all, I tried to maintain Dad's vision. I believed in what he had built and wanted to preserve it. I kept telling myself that confrontation wouldn't solve anything, that I needed to be strategic, that the right moment to reveal my controlling interest hadn't yet arrived. But as weeks turned into months, it became increasingly clear that Marcus wasn't just making changes. He was systematically dismantling my father's legacy piece by piece. I arrived at the office early one Monday morning, as was my habit. The building was quiet, with only a few early birds setting up for the day. I tried to access the quarterly projections file to prepare for an upcoming product roadmap meeting. But my credentials were denied. Thinking it might be a system glitch, I walked down to IT. Dennis, our IT director, looked uncomfortable when I explained the issue. Your access level was changed on Friday afternoon, he admitted. Avoiding eye contact. Changed by whom? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus sent the request. Said it was a security protocol adjustment. I thanked Dennis and walked back to my office, processing this information. My access had been restricted without any notification or explanation. This wasn't a miscommunication or difference in business philosophy. This was a deliberate move to limit my influence. Later that morning, I noticed unusual activity around the main conference room. Board members were arriving, along with our legal counsel and financial advisors. No meeting had been on my calendar. I approached Vicky, Marcus's assistant, who was directing people into the room. "What's going on?" I asked. "Oh," she said, clearly flustered. "It's just a quick strategy discussion." "About what?" "I'm not entirely sure of the agenda," she replied, though the stack of presentation folders in her arms suggested otherwise. I waited until Marcus arrived, stopping him before he could enter the room. "What's this meeting about?" I asked directly. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Just a small informal discussion about Q3 priorities. Nothing that required your input. As head of product development, I should be in any meeting discussing quarterly priorities," I pointed out. "This is more about financial structuring," he countered smoothly. "We didn't want to waste your time with boring budget details when you could be focusing on what you do best." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry. I'll fill you in if anything relevant to your department comes up." He disappeared into the conference room, leaving me standing in the hallway. Through the glass, I could see presentation slides that clearly showed product roadmaps, my department's territory. Later that week, I noticed Vicky watching me whenever I walked through the executive floor. She would immediately pick up her phone when I passed, presumably reporting my movements to Marcus. The message was clear. I was being monitored. Then came the news about Robert Johnson. Robert had been with the company for 22 years, originally hired by my father as one of the first 10 employees. He headed our client success department and was beloved by both customers and staff. He was also someone I regularly sought advice from, a connection to my father's original vision. "Robert's taking early retirement," Marcus announced casually during a leadership meeting. "Effective next week." I was stunned. Robert was only 57 and had never mentioned retirement plans. The news clearly surprised others in the room as well. After the meeting, I called Robert and invited him to lunch. We met at a small cafe well away from the office. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. "What happened, Robert?" I asked once we'd ordered. "I was told the company is moving in a new direction," he said carefully. "That my position was being eliminated in the restructuring." "Who told you this?" "Marcus. He said it was a decision from executive leadership and the board." I frowned. "I'm part of executive leadership, And this is the first I'm hearing about it. Robert gave me a sad smile. I figured as much. Things are changing, Wilbur. The company your father built. It's disappearing piece by piece. I tried to speak with the board chairperson, Thomas Green, but his assistant informed me he was unavailable all week. My emails requesting a meeting went unanswered. I was being systematically isolated. That Friday, Diane invited me to dinner at her home, just the two of us. Marcus was conveniently away on a business trip. She served expensive wine and made small talk about art and travel before finally revealing the purpose of the invitation. "I've been thinking about you, Wilbur," she said, her voice softening. "You're young, talented, with so much potential. I wonder if you're truly happy at Reynolds Enterprises." "What do you mean?" I asked, though her direction was clear. "Well, it can't be easy living in your father's shadow, always being compared to him. And now with Marcus bringing such fresh energy to the company." She sipped her wine. "Perhaps you might be happier exploring opportunities elsewhere. Finding your own path." I maintained my composure, though anger simmered beneath the surface. "Reynolds Enterprises is my path. It's where I belong." Diane smiled tightly. "Of course, darling. I just want what's best for you." The following week brought another unwelcome surprise. Marcus had hired a consulting firm, Apex Strategies, to evaluate operational efficiency across the company. Somehow, their evaluation focused intensely on my department. They requested interviews with all my team members, examined our processes in minute detail, and questioned every decision I'd made over the past year. When I confronted Marcus about this targeted scrutiny, the conversation quickly escalated. "You're being paranoid," he insisted. "All departments are being evaluated equally." "That's not what I'm hearing from other department heads," I countered. "This isn't what Dad would have wanted." Marcus's expression hardened. "Dad's not here anymore, and things change. The company needs to evolve, to survive. If you can't accept that, maybe you're not the right fit for the new Reynolds Enterprises." That night, I began methodically documenting everything. Every meeting I'd been excluded from, every decision made without my input, every subtle undermining of my authority. I arranged a confidential meeting with Janet, our CFO, at her home after hours. "I'm concerned about where the company is headed," I told her. "Careful not to reveal my majority ownership yet." Janet looked troubled. "You should be. Marcus has been pushing for access to our cash reserves. Nearly $15 million that your father kept as security against market downturns. He's presenting a proposal to the board next month to utilize those funds for strategic acquisitions, though he's been vague about what those might be." This was the first I'd heard of any acquisition plans. Another major decision I was being kept in the dark about. The disappointment I felt was evolving into something more urgent. It was time to start planning my countermove. The quarterly all-company meeting was held in the large atrium of our headquarters. All 300 employees gathered as Marcus took the stage, confident in his tailored suit. The giant screen behind him displayed a new logo and branding, something I hadn't been consulted on. "Today, I'm excited to share Reynolds Enterprises' new direction," Marcus announced, pacing the stage with practiced ease. "We're streamlining operations, focusing on high-profit sectors, and repositioning ourselves as an elite boutique service provider rather than a mass-market solution." My stomach dropped. This new direction dismantled much of my father's vision. Reynolds Enterprises had always prided itself on providing quality technology solutions across market segments, making our products accessible to businesses of all sizes. Dad believed technology should elevate everyone, not just those who could afford premium prices. When Marcus opened the floor for questions, I stood up. "This represents a fundamental shift from the company's founding principles," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my anger. "Our diverse client base has been our strength through multiple market fluctuations. Abandoning mid-market clients puts us at significant risk during economic downturns." Marcus's smile tightened. "While I appreciate the history lesson, Wilbur, modern business realities require adaptation. The board has reviewed the strategy and agrees this specialization will maximize shareholder value." He turned to another raised hand, effectively dismissing me. After the meeting, I overheard two marketing employees whispering as I passed. "Poor Wilbur," one said. "He's taking his dad's death really hard. Can't accept that things need to change. Marcus says he's been emotionally unstable," the other replied. "That's why he's being kept out of major decisions." The narrative was being carefully constructed. I wasn't being sidelined because of my views on business strategy. I was being portrayed as emotionally compromised, unable to move on from my father's death. It was subtle character assassination. The following week, I arrived to find my office contents being moved. The facilities manager awkwardly explained that executive offices were being reconfigured. My new space was a small office far from the executive floor, next to the supply room. Meanwhile, Marcus's college friend Bradley was installed in a large office near the executive suite. Having been promoted to Vice President of Innovation Strategy, a newly created position that effectively put him above me in supervising product development. One by one, key members of my team were reassigned or let go during what Marcus called essential restructuring. People who had been with the company for years, who understood our products and clients intimately, were replaced with new hires who had connections to Marcus but little relevant experience. Sarah from HR requested a discreet meeting at a coffee shop, several blocks from the office. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said, nervously checking to ensure no one from the company was nearby. "But Marcus has asked me to document any potential performance issues in your work. He specifically asked about grounds for termination with cause. He's building a case against me," I realized aloud. Sarah nodded. "Be careful, Wilbur. Document everything. Don't give them any ammunition." That evening, working late, I discovered files on the shared executive drive that hadn't been restricted from my access. Among them was a presentation prepared for the next board meeting, titled Strategic Divestiture, Technology Division Valuation. My blood ran cold as I read through it. Marcus was planning to sell off our core technology division, the heart of the company, to a competitor. The division employed 200 of our 300 staff and contained all the proprietary technology my father had developed. The presentation positioned it as unlocking shareholder value, but it would effectively hollow out Reynolds Enterprises, leaving only a shell of consulting services. This technology division had been my father's pride. He had often spoken about how these innovations would form the foundation for the company's next 30 years. Selling it would betray everything he had worked for. In the following weeks, Marcus became increasingly bold in his campaign against me. In his weekly board updates, he would include lines like continuing challenges in product development leadership and concerns about adaptation to market realities. He began excluding me from client meetings I had previously led, explaining to customers that Wilbur is focusing on internal projects right now. Diane's approach became more personal. At a charity event the company sponsored, she pulled aside several longtime business associates of my father's. "We're all worried about Wilbur," I overheard her saying. "Since Richard's passing, he's been... Well, it runs in families, doesn't it? Richard had those episodes of depression in his 40s. We're encouraging Wilbur to get help." I nearly lost my temper then, almost blew my cover by confronting her publicly. But I remembered my father's advice. Strategic patience. Wilbur. Know when to hold and when to strike. Instead, I drove to the cemetery where Dad was buried. Sitting by his gravestone, I wondered if I should just walk away, start fresh somewhere else. The company was nearly unrecognizable already. Maybe fighting for it was futile. "I don't know what to do, Dad," I said to the quiet evening air. As if in answer, my phone rang. It was Jonathan Mercer, my father's attorney and friend. "Can we meet tomorrow?" he asked. "There are some matters we should discuss." The next morning, in Jonathan's office, he reminded me of the plan my father had put in place. "Richard anticipated something like this might happen," he said. "That's why he arranged the share ownership as he did. But he also knew timing would be crucial. I'm not sure how much longer I can wait," I admitted. "They're dismantling everything he built." "Then don't wait," Jonathan said simply. "But make sure when you move, you have everything you need to not just win the battle, but the war." I spent the next 2 weeks gathering evidence. Financial reports showing how Marcus had misrepresented company performance to the board. emails discussing the planned sale of the technology division, documentation of the systematic removal of long-term employees loyal to my father's vision. Then I learned from Janet about the emergency board meeting scheduled for Thursday. Marcus had accelerated his timeline for the technology division sale and wanted board approval immediately. This would be my last chance to stop him before irreversible damage was done. The stage was set for confrontation. 3 years of patience was about to pay off. Thursday morning arrived bright and clear, a beautiful spring day that belied the storm about to break inside Reynolds Enterprises. I dressed with particular care, choosing my father's favorite suit and his worn leather briefcase, filled with all the documentation I had gathered. Jonathan would meet me at the office with the legal paperwork confirming my ownership. I arrived an hour before the scheduled meeting time, planning to set up in the boardroom, but when I tried the door, it was locked. Through the glass, I could see the room had been prepared, presentation materials at each seat, water pitchers placed at intervals along the polished table. But someone had made sure I couldn't enter early. I waited in my small office, reviewing my notes one final time, mentally rehearsing what I would say. At precisely 9:30, I walked back to the boardroom and saw Marcus arriving with Thomas Green, the board chairman, and several other board members. Diane was with them, dressed impeccably as always. Marcus spotted me approaching and subtly positioned himself between me and the door. "Good morning, Wilbur," he said with artificial cheerfulness. "Did you need something?" "I'm here for the board meeting," I replied calmly. His smile hardened. "This is a special session for shareholders and board members only. Confidential financial matters." I tried to step around him. As head of product development, I should be present for any discussion about the technology division. Marcus moved to block my path completely, his voice dropping so only I could hear. "Know your place, Wilbur. You're not needed here." Then, louder, for the benefit of the gathering board members, "Sorry. This is for shareholders only." Diane stepped forward, placing her hand on Marcus's arm in a show of support. Her smile was pure condescension. "Darling, we'll fill you in on any relevant details afterward. Why don't you focus on your projects for now?" The board members looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Years of Marcus's narrative about my emotional instability had done their work. No one was going to stand up for me. It was the moment I had been waiting for, the perfect crystallization of everything that had been happening for 3 years. Being shut out, talked down to, manipulated, and marginalized in the company my father had built, that I had helped grow, that should have been my legacy to carry forward. I smiled and pulled out my phone. "Actually, this is perfect timing." I tapped the screen, sending a pre-prepared message to Jonathan, who I knew was waiting in the lobby. Perfect timing to announce, I own 75% of the shares. The words hung in the air. Marcus's smug expression froze, then slowly morphed into confusion. "What are you talking about?" he scoffed. But uncertainty had crept into his voice. 3 years ago, after the will reading, Dad's private arrangements were revealed to me, I explained, my voice steady and clear enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. He transferred 50% of the company shares to me through a private holding company. Add that to the 25% I publicly inherited, and I control 75% of Reynolds Enterprises. The stunned silence was broken by the elevator doors opening. Jonathan stepped out, carrying a leather portfolio. Seeing the tableau in the hallway, he approached with professional calm. "I have the documentation right here," he said, opening the portfolio. "All legally executed and filed with the appropriate authorities." Marcus snatched the papers, his hands shaking slightly as he flipped through them. "This can't be right. This must be fraudulent." Thomas Green, who had known my father for decades, took the documents from Marcus's hands and examined them carefully. His eyebrows rose as he verified the contents. "These appear to be in order," he said quietly. "The transfer dates, signatures, corporate seals. Everything is legitimate." "This is impossible," Diane hissed, her composed facade cracking. "Richard would never do this behind our backs. Wilbur has clearly fabricated these documents." "The documents were verified by 2 independent law firms," Jonathan interjected smoothly. "And the transfers were made before Richard's illness progressed to the point where his competence could be questioned. Everything is ironclad. Marcus's face had gone from red to pale. "You've been lying to us for 3 years," he accused. "Pretending to go along with everything, while secretly holding control." "I wasn't lying," I corrected him. "I was watching, learning, giving you the opportunity to prove what kind of leader you would be." I stepped closer to him. "You failed that test spectacularly. This is a betrayal of family," Diane declared dramatically, looking around at the board members for support. "After everything we've done for Wilbur, the way we've included him despite his difficulties." "Betrayal?" I repeated, my voice hardening. "You want to talk about betrayal? How about systematically dismantling my father's life's work? How about spreading rumors about my mental stability? How about planning to sell off the heart of this company without any regard for the employees whose livelihoods depend on it?" No one had an answer for that. The truth, laid bare in the hallway, was undeniable. "As majority shareholder," I said, turning to address the board members directly, "I'm calling an immediate vote to remove Marcus Reynolds as Chief Operating Officer and board member of Reynolds Enterprises, effective immediately." Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my lapel. "You can't do this." 2 security guards, summoned by Jonathan as part of our plan, quickly appeared. I hadn't wanted this public spectacle, but Marcus had forced my hand with his hallway confrontation. "Please escort Mr. Marcus Harrington and Miss Diane Harrington from the building," I instructed them calmly, using their legal surnames rather than the Reynolds name they had adopted. Their access to all company systems should be terminated immediately. As they were led away, Marcus's threats and Diane's indignant protests echoing down the hallway, I turned to the shell-shocked board members. "Shall we begin our meeting?" I suggested, gesturing to the boardroom door. "We have a lot to discuss about the real future of Reynolds Enterprises." I took the chairperson's seat at the head of the boardroom table, a position I had never occupied before. The board members filed in silently, exchanging uncertain glances. Janet arrived moments later, having been alerted by our prearranged signal. Michael from engineering joined us shortly after. I wanted key allies present for what would come next. For 3 years, I began once everyone was seated. I have watched this company, my father's legacy, being steered off course. Today, that ends. I opened my laptop and projected a series of financial reports onto the screen at the end of the room. These are the actual performance metrics of Reynolds Enterprises over the past 3 years, compared with the modified versions that were presented to this board. The discrepancies were significant and immediately apparent. Marcus had consistently overstated revenue growth while hiding troubling trends in client retention and product development delays. Next, I continued, advancing to a new slide, are records of Marcus's meetings with Tekova Industries, our largest competitor. I played a legally recorded conversation from a business dinner where Marcus had openly discussed selling our core technology patents. This was recorded 2 weeks ago by a loyal Reynolds employee who was justifiably concerned about what they were hearing. One by one, I methodically presented evidence of Marcus's mismanagement and deception. The board members' expressions shifted from shock to anger as the full picture emerged. "Now," I said, turning to address each board member individually, "I'd like to discuss your individual roles in allowing this situation to develop." I started with Thomas Green. "Thomas, you've been on this board for 15 years. My father trusted you. Yet you authorized resource reallocations that gutted our research and development capabilities without consulting the head of product development." "Why?" Thomas cleared his throat uncomfortably. Marcus presented compelling data, showing the R&D investments weren't yielding appropriate returns. "The board has a fiduciary responsibility to maximize shareholder value." "Compelling but fabricated data," I corrected, displaying the true metrics. "Had you consulted me, or even independently verified the information, you would have seen a very different picture." I continued around the table, addressing each board member's actions or inactions that had enabled Marcus's agenda. Some had been actively complicit, others merely passive. Failing to ask critical questions when red flags appeared. "Each of you has a choice to make today," I concluded. "Those who knowingly participated in these deceptions can submit their resignations immediately. Those who were simply negligent in their oversight duties can commit, in writing, to upholding the original vision and values of Reynolds Enterprises going forward. 3 board members resigned on the spot. The remaining 5, including Thomas, agreed to continue under the new terms. We would rebuild the board with people who shared the company's core values in the coming weeks. With the board situation addressed, I turned to the company's operations. Janet, please share the financial impact of the changes Marcus implemented. Janet presented a detailed analysis, showing how the elite repositioning had actually decreased overall profitability while increasing volatility. The consulting firm Marcus had hired had recommended changes that benefited their other clients at our expense, a clear conflict of interest that had gone unquestioned. Effective immediately, I announced, the planned sale of the technology division is canceled. We will return to our balanced market approach, serving both enterprise and mid-market clients. And we're implementing my father's long-term growth strategy that was shelved after his death. Over the next several hours, we drafted a comprehensive plan to undo the damage Marcus had caused. Michael would temporarily oversee operations while we searched for a suitable COO. We would reach out to recently departed employees, offering them the opportunity to return. The toxic performance metrics Marcus had implemented would be replaced with more balanced evaluations that valued collaboration and innovation. By late afternoon, I called an all-hands meeting. Rumors had been swirling throughout the building all day as people noticed Marcus and Diane's abrupt departure and the security team changing access codes. Standing before the assembled employees, I felt a wave of emotion. These were the people who had built Reynolds Enterprises alongside my father and me. They deserved the truth. Today marks a return to the core principles that made this company great. I began. For too long, we've been moving away from what Reynolds Enterprises stands for. Innovation that serves all businesses, a workplace that values every contributor, and leadership that looks beyond the next quarter to build lasting success. I explained the ownership situation without dwelling on family drama, focusing instead on the path forward. I acknowledged the uncertainty and difficulties of the past 3 years and committed to rebuilding the collaborative culture that had been eroded. Some of you have lost colleagues and friends in the recent restructuring, I said. I want you to know we'll be reaching out to many of those individuals, inviting them to return if they wish. Reynolds Enterprises is a family, in the true sense of the word. We take care of our own. The response was overwhelming. People I had worked alongside for years approached me afterward, sharing stories of how they had tried to resist the changes Marcus implemented, how they had worried about the company's direction, but felt powerless to speak up. That evening, I went to the family home, the house where I had grown up, which Diane and Marcus now occupied. Security accompanied me, not because I expected violence, but because I wanted witnesses to whatever transpired. Marcus was waiting in the living room, a glass of scotch in hand. Diane was nowhere to be seen. Enjoyed your little coup? He asked bitterly as I entered. This wasn't about power, Marcus. It was about protection. Protection of what my father built, what hundreds of people have contributed to, what thousands of clients rely on. He laughed harshly. Save the noble speeches. You could have taken control at any time if you objected to my management. Instead, you let me hang myself while pretending to go along with everything. That's cold, Wilbur. Colder than I gave you credit for. I gave you 3 years to prove my father wrong about you, I replied evenly. 3 years to show you cared about Reynolds Enterprises as more than just an asset to exploit. You failed consistently. Marcus set down his glass and leaned forward. I'll fight this, you know. Legal challenges, shareholder lawsuits, media campaigns questioning your competence. By the time I'm done, the Reynolds name won't be worth dirt. I placed a USB drive on the table between us. This contains copies of all the evidence I presented to the board today. Financial misrepresentations, unauthorized negotiations with competitors, documented character assassination attempts against me. Shall I continue? His expression faltered. You have a choice, I continued. You can leave quietly, with a reasonable severance package and your reputation relatively intact. Or you can fight, and everything on this drive becomes public record. Diane appeared in the doorway, her earlier indignation replaced with calculation. Perhaps we've all been too hasty, she suggested smoothly. Family disagreements can get out of hand. Maybe there's a compromise to be found. The time for compromise was during the past 3 years, I replied. That opportunity has passed. After further discussion, Marcus agreed to resign from all company positions in exchange for a severance package, signing comprehensive non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreements. I offered him a non-executive role with clear expectations if he wanted to remain connected to the company. But he declined. "I'll make my own way," he said, a hint of his old arrogance returning. "Watch your back, little brother." This isn't over. I implemented immediate financial controls to prevent any last-minute damage, changing bank authorizations and requiring dual approvals for any significant transactions. The company's intellectual property was secured, and all ongoing negotiations Marcus had initiated were paused for review. That weekend, I hosted a barbecue at my home for the core team that would help rebuild the company. Janet, Michael, Sarah, and other longtime employees gathered to celebrate our new beginning and plan our path forward. For the first time in 3 years, the weight of silence had been lifted. We could speak freely about our hopes for Reynolds Enterprises and work openly toward preserving and extending my father's legacy. As we raised our glasses in a toast, I felt a sense of rightness that had been missing since Dad's death. The company was back on track, and the future looked bright again. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The changes we implemented began bearing fruit faster than I had dared hope. With the technology division securely remaining as our core, we refocused on innovation and client service. Revenue stabilized, then began climbing steadily. As we won back clients who had left during Marcus's tenure, the company culture transformed as well. Without the atmosphere of fear and competition Marcus had fostered, collaboration flourished. The innovation I knew was always present in our team emerged once more, resulting in 2 major product breakthroughs that positioned us ahead of competitors. Many of the employees who had been pushed out returned, bringing their institutional knowledge and skills back to strengthen our operations. Robert Johnson came out of his retirement to head a new client success initiative that dramatically improved retention rates. The board was reconstituted with a mix of experienced business leaders and technology innovators who understood and valued our company's mission. Together, we established governance procedures that would prevent future concentration of power and ensure transparency in all major decisions. Marcus, true to his nature, had not gone quietly into the night. He attempted to start a competing venture, approaching our clients and employees. But without my father's innovations or Reynolds Enterprises' reputation to trade on, he struggled to gain traction. Last I heard, he had taken a mid-level position with a firm in another state. Diane made several attempts at reconciliation, each more transparently self-serving than the last. When it became clear she would not regain access to company resources or social standing through me, she too faded from the picture, eventually moving to be near Marcus. In the quiet moments between the intense work of rebuilding, I often reflected on my father's wisdom in planning for contingencies none of us had wanted to face. He had seen something in Marcus and Diane that I had initially been blind to, and his foresight had saved the company he loved. "Your father was a chess player, always thinking several moves ahead," Jonathan told me over dinner one evening. But more than that, he was an excellent judge of character. He recognized what Marcus might do, but he also believed in what you would do when the moment came. The healing process wasn't simple or linear. There were days when the betrayal still stung sharply, when memories of family dinners and the hope we might become a true blended family resurfaced. Trust didn't come easily to me anymore. But rather than becoming bitter, I channeled those feelings into building stronger, more authentic relationships with the people who had stood by me and the company. My leadership style evolved into something that honored my father's example, while incorporating my own strengths and experiences. Where Dad had been charismatic and intuitive, I was methodical and collaborative. Where he had sometimes kept his cards close to his chest, I strived for transparency with our team, believing informed employees made better decisions. We expanded the Richard Reynolds Foundation, using a portion of our profits to fund technology education for underprivileged students. The foundation became a living tribute to my father's belief that technology should be an equalizing force, accessible to all. I began mentoring young employees the way my father had mentored me, taking time to explain not just what we did but why we did it. The values that drove our business decisions became explicit, discussed openly rather than assumed. Through this difficult journey, I learned lessons that no business school could teach. I learned that patience isn't passive. It's a strategic choice that requires constant vigilance and preparation. I learned that seeking justice is fundamentally different from seeking revenge, with the former focused on restoration and the latter on destruction. I learned that family is defined more by actions than by blood or legal ties. The loyal employees who risked their positions to warn me, the board members who admitted their mistakes and committed to doing better, the clients who returned because they believed in our mission, these people became my extended family. Most importantly, I learned that carrying on a legacy doesn't mean preserving it in amber, unchanged, and unyielding. It means taking the core values and adapting them to new challenges, allowing the vision to evolve while keeping its heart intact. 1 year after the boardroom confrontation, I stood in front of our expanded headquarters as we unveiled a new sign: Reynolds Enterprises, Building Tomorrow's Solutions. Today it read, a phrase my father had used in the company's early days. Looking at the assembled employees, many who had been with us through the darkest times and many new faces bringing fresh energy and ideas, I felt pride not just in what we had saved but in what we were building together. I think Dad would have been proud too. Not just that I had protected the company from those who would have dismantled it, but how I had done it, with strategic patience and principled action, allowing everyone involved the opportunity to choose their own path. My name is Wilbur Reynolds, and this is the story of how I reclaimed my father's legacy and found my own voice in the process. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't the path I would have chosen. But looking back now, I wouldn't change a thing, because sometimes the greatest tests reveal not just who we are, but who we can become. Have you ever had to stand up for something that was rightfully yours, or witnessed someone trying to take credit for your hard work? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of corporate intrigue and sweet justice resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of triumph over adversity. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth, but thriving, in spite of those who tried to hold you back. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.